Welcome back to Bottomline Africa. I am Ben Kitili, sitting in for Yusuf Ibrahim. We are talking about politics of cooperation, given what happened on Friday with that political pact, so-called pact, between President Uhuru Kenyatta and the National Super Alliance leader Raila Odinga. A lot has been happening since then. Numerous reactions from the political circles. Let me introduce my guest on the panel this evening, Professor Isabel Kodiaga, Regional Representative, Southern Delta International, as well as Kakai Kissinger, lawyer and governance expert. We shall be going through some of the issues both here in Kenya and the impact across the continent, if any. Now, let's come back to what's happening today. And legislators from the opposition leader Raila Odinga's ODM party have endorsed the Friday cooperation pact between Odinga and his arch-political nemesis, President Uhuru Kenyatta, with a call to the other NASA affiliate parties to adopt similar resolutions.
I think he gave a very extensive briefing. And if you have any doubt about what was said yesterday, is contained in this statement signed by all the principals. And the long and short of it is that they appreciated the doors of dialogue that His Excellency Raila Odinga had opened.
The members encouraged the party leader to use this engagement to seek justice for the victims of post-election violence as a way of finding a lasting reconciliation and a unit, and to make the country one unit.
Tutafanya kazi kwa pamoja, licha ya kuwa tuko katika vyama tofauti tofauti, lakini tutaweka matakwa ya wale watu wa pwani mwanzo kabla masala yoyote mengine hayajaweza kuibuka.
Kwa kweli ni hatua ambayo imetutia imani na ni hatua ambayo tumeipongeza na tumechukulia kwa uzito sana, na tunaamini ya kwamba ni mambo mapya katika Kenya yetu na ni jambo ambalo litaenda kusaidia ama kuipeleka nchi yetu mbele.
All right, for the next 20 minutes or so, we shall be going through those issues and trying to put perspective, this issue into perspective. Let me, gentlemen, get very quickly your reaction to the story itself. Since Friday last week, there have been numerous reactions from both sides of the political divide on this pact or cooperation or unity, if you like. Some people, congratulating Raila Odinga for coming to the, conversation table with Uhuru Kenyatta. Others vilifying him. Words like betrayal have been used. Prof, let me start with you. What is your take on this?
Thank you very much, Ben. First and foremost, I must say that the meeting, the whole thing would be best analyzed within 4 prisms. First, the meeting. 2, the reactions.
Right.
And thirdly, to get a theoretical model to explain it. And maybe fourthly, we would examine the ramifications of future case scenarios and what it would be reverberations in the continent. Number 1, the meeting itself came up with 2 issues. 1, the realization that they would put aside their differences so that they will re-engineer or reconstruct a new nation. And the second aspect was to set up a program to actualize those shared objectives, in quotes, which they talked about negative ethnicity, they talked about all corruption, among a host of others.
All right.
Now, by and large, these are issues which have bedeviled this country for 54 years. So whatever they were telling us on that day is not new. But what is new is that for the first time, Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta were telling the country that they have certain shared objectives to deal with corruption, to deal with ethnicity, to deal with all the ills that have been deviling the country.
All right.
Before we even go into attempt to blame or pour accolades to the 2 gentlemen, it is important to understand the situation in which they found themselves. And it would be right to say that President Uhuru Kenyatta had 5 critical problems which he had to address. Namely, 1 is the issue of legitimacy.
All right.
When you're a president in a country where more than half the country do not recognize you, that's not very nice. 2, when you are a president in a country where there is agitation and recalcitrance all the time, you need to find a way of dealing with it. Thirdly, of course, when NASA came up with the boycotts and the mass action, naturally, they hurt President Uhuru where it hurts most, because it went into his family's personal businesses,
right,
and there was need to do something. Fourthly, there's the role of the international community, who knew and felt that continued discordance would actually hurt foreign investment and business. And for those reasons, therefore, Uhuru had to reach out to Raila.
Right.
Raila, on the other side, also found himself in a situation where, one, he realized that mass actions and boycotts could only achieve so much. Two, he was finding himself alienated by the international community. And thirdly, there is the restive constituency.
So it was mutually helpful for both gentlemen. That's what you're saying, Prof.
Yes, so the constituency that had been promised Canaan and could not reach Canaan. So in all that, therefore, it is important to look at them coming together, not that they wanted to be together, but they found out that actually the conditions, the circumstances, the personal conditions, the structural conditions, and the circumstantial conditions necessitated this. And that is what experts in conflict resolution talk about as cutting losses. So let
me bring Kakai into this conversation. Bonawakili, do you agree with Prof? Prof is saying this is the first time that such is happening. A lot of people have likened this cooperation between Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta to what happened towards the end of the last century when the National Development Party, NDP, Raila Odinga's NDP merged with KANU for a few short months. What is your take on this issue?
Thanks very much, Ben. And I think, as they say, that an apple doesn't fall very far from a tree. And I think it's very important that we have to put this thing into perspective. We are where we are right now as Kenyans because of history. We are a product of history. And therefore, allow me to take you through some kind of history which will remind Kenyans, because as we Kenyans, we are very fast in terms of forgetting where we are coming from and forgetting our history. So I think it's important to understand the following things that leads us to understand why we are where we are, because we are where we are right now because of history. In 1992, when multi-party politics was introduced in Kenya, there was a gentleman called Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who was the doyen of political opposition in this country. He formed then what he was calling the then FORD. And when he formed FORD, for some reason they had pacts. And when we're talking about political corporations, we're also talking about political pacts, and we're also talking about coalition government all together, because all that is what we call political coalitions or political corporation. When Ford did not go through very well in 1992, they split and formed Ford Asili and the original Ford. So that's how they split. And so that political corporation at that time completely flopped. And that's the history that we have. Then come 1997, Ford Kenya was then formed. And you remember that when Ford Kenya was formed, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga had a specific responsibility to ensure that the leadership of Ford K is taken over by somebody he believed or somebody he trusted. So he groomed up the then Michael Wamalwa Kijana and then groomed up Paul Mwite to take over Ford Kenya. We all remember what happened in terms of Ford Kenya, how that political pact fell apart. We all remember what happened in Thika. Then come now, the split of Ford Kenya in 1997, where now Raila Amolo Odinga took away and disappeared and formed the Tinga Tinga, the NPK party. Come in 2002, Ben, in Africa, is the first time, for example, where coalition and political corporations took place. And the first country to witness this was Senegal, when Senegalese came together and then got power from the ruling party, which had been in power for 44 years. So in 2002, there was a political pact that was formed between the Moi regime and, of course, Raila Amolo Odinga. Then he went in and even became the Secretary General of KANU that time. And that then was a fallout when Moi preferred the then Uhuru to become the president, and then it led into the rainbow. So that coalition or political pact was formed in 2002. It didn't last long after that. We also had another pact which was formed in 2002 by Nyachae Ford people with Raila Amolo Odinga. In 2007, we had another political pact that came in. That's why we had the post-election violence. The peace accord came in. And so we saw also the political cooperation coming in 2007 and falling apart. In 2012, we had, of course, coalition governments coming in, coalition political parties coalescing together, coming in, trying to win the election. They did not win the election. A petition went to court. Decisions were made, and then in 2017...
Wanawakili, you've mentioned a number of scenarios. So are we likely to see a scenario that is closer to the 2008 Grand Coalition government or the pre-election pact of 2002?
And that's where I'm coming actually with this discussion. Therefore, what we are seeing with all these political pacts that have taken place since 1992 up till 2017, we are seeing a common denominator. And the common denominator in these political maneuvers and in these political pacts is none other than Raila Amolo Odinga, apart from the 1992 political pact that didn't take place in terms of Ford. Now, what we are saying, therefore, is that an apple does not fall far from a tree. What we are now seeing is we are seeing a political pact. Whatever the two leaders have agreed or whatever they have gone into, one must then be very cautious and wonder, what is our history saying about political pacts in this country? If you go by what I've just analyzed in terms of historical perspective, then you'll be very wary as a political analyst and wonder whether this pact that we have seen right now, I don't know how it will manifest, but we are going to see that in a few number of days, whether it will really come in, because the same denominator is the same person that has been.
So what you're saying that it will not last?
I highly doubt it will last.
All right, I want us to put this into the perspective of the region of East Africa and the continent of Africa in general, if Kenya is giving a good example. But before we do that, Prof, you said that the two gentlemen have been brought together by political, personal, circumstantial issues. But what is your take on the quality of this pact? Because what we do know so far is that there's not a lot of things that have been put on paper. That document on Friday, that press release by the two gentlemen did not mention Jubilee or NASA. So, and Kenyans know for the last few months, these are the political parties, these are political outfits that they have been, doing politics with. Should Kenyans be worried that this doesn't seem so solid as yet?
Hello, you're talking to me?
Yes, Prof.
Thank you very much. First and foremost, we must realize and we must not lose sight of the fact that a statesman is seen in moments of crisis. And rising to the occasion in moments of crisis, that is what makes a statesman be a statesman. And all the years, the historical perspective that has been given by Kakai is great, but it's necessary to realize that it has a lot to do with our nature as Kenyans and very little to do with the persons in question. If anything, the strides that the country has made in those years had a lot of, you'll find the fingerprint of one man, Raila Amolo Odinga. So for that very reason, it is not something to actually look at from a negative perspective, but to see certain steps we are making forwards. Now, I was bringing in this aspect of the model that would help us understand all these things.
All right.
And the experts in the area of conflict dissolution have identified, and Zatman has identified 4 clear models which will help us actually to unravel the whole thing. The first one is what ordinarily is called the Harding stalemate model, which, if you look at the scenario that President Uhuru and the People's President Raila Amolo Odinga found themselves in, they had reached a stalemate where they were on a plane which is extending to an uncertain future, and there was no evidence that there would be gains on either side.
Right.
2, there is also the other model which Zatman looks at very well, which he calls the imminent catastrophe model. Mm-hmm. And the 2 actually came to the realization that whichever way they look at it, both of them, given those challenges that I had alluded to earlier up there, both of them were facing certain serious catastrophic moments. And the third model, which of course is called the entrapment model, both of them were entrapped. And paradoxically, entrapment model is one where actually any harm or any hurt leads onto actually a continuity or escalation of the conflict. The fourth, and I think this is what actually helped the two gentlemen to come to the table, is the enticing opportunity model.
All right.
And there were enticing opportunities where they realized that rather than grandstanding, rather than digging in, they could do something which would be better for Kenyans and help them to right the wrongs of history. And if the country can make strides as a result of that, then I think we have every reason to see the two gentlemen as statesmen.
All right, let's take this further afield.
Yes.
We've just heard from my colleague in Uganda, Solomon Saranja, saying that political players in Uganda are looking up to Kenyans, saying, look, Kenyans are coming together to talk. We have such divisive politics. We have what's happening in Tanzania between the ruling CCM party and Chadema and the other political parties. Do you think Kenya, Prof, let me start with you, do you think Kenya is setting a good example with this? Is this a good example for democracy?
Absolutely. I think Kenya is a leader in the region. And if you care to reflect on the history of democratization in the country, that Raila Odinga would visit and sit with Uhuru Kenyatta and talk about issues that actually affect the country, that is a plus. On the contrary, Kizza Besigye and Kaguta Museveni would never sit down and talk. And you find that actually tears the country apart. So from where I sit, I would rather have a situation where leaders are able to sit on a table and talk about critical issues that are affecting the country. Like when we are talking about negative ethnicity in this country, we are talking about marginalization and those issues that have constantly come around during election cycles.
All right.
Tanzania is a bit better than Uganda, I must say. It's much better than Uganda. And what we should look at in the entire region, even Southern Sudan and elsewhere, is where leaders are able to step out of their ethnic cocoons. They're able to step out of their party loyalties and look at the bigger picture. And the bigger picture is the country and the region. So that Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta did this is a plus. And Kenya is a leader in that direction.
Wanawakili, what does history tell us? Has this kind of political cooperation worked elsewhere on the continent before?
I think first and foremost to say that whether we are doing well as a country and whether the other countries within the region are going to copy from us, as unlike what Prof is saying, I'll say yes and no. Yes and no in the sense that when it comes to short gains, when it comes to short objectives, then we are very good at it. We have been able to achieve this. For example, let's remind Kenyans what happened in 2007. We had the Agenda 4 issues that came up, and we were able to do Agenda 1, 2, and 3 very quick because these were short gains for a short period of time. Agenda 1, for example, was let's end the violence, and the violence was stopped immediately because people said stop it. And when we reached on Agenda 4, which were now long-term gains, we achieved some but did not achieve others. So what I'm saying is that whatever we are doing as a country within the region, we are, yes, achieving some things because some of these pacts and coalitions and corporations leading to institutional reforms, some of them leading to legal reforms, which are good things to replicate. But then in the long gains, we still have our issues still underlying within the carpet that we have not been able to completely solve. Since 2007, I do not think that we have been able to solve all those issues that were identified in the peace accord. However, within African region, we have countries that have done extremely well. If you look at a country like Liberia, for example, Liberia had a civil war of over 14 years in turmoil. The country was in turmoil. And what happened at that time was to come up with a peace accord, what they were calling comprehensive peace accord. In that comprehensive peace accord in 2005 and 2006, they told Taylor, you must now leave the country, go to Nigeria, seek asylum, and let's lead this country in a different way. So it worked. But it worked because the politicians in Liberia took the responsibility to carry the mandate of the people. I am not so sure whether what we are doing in Kenya is involving the mandate of the people, whether we are moving with the people or is on selfish grounds. So that is the biggest challenge.
All right, let me get your final thoughts, gentlemen, because of time. Let me start with you, Prof, in 30 seconds only. We are told there's a team working on the modalities of this document on the way forward on what this pact is all about. Yet we are seeing that the NASA affiliate parties are yet to come on board fully. What is your prediction? What's going to happen?
Thank you. First and foremost, Ben, I would like to take a point of departure from my brother Kissinger. Success is a journey, never a destination. And for those of us who have fought in the trenches, I was in the trenches in the early 80s, 82, 83, 84. It was actually seditious to have a magazine. Today we can talk in the studio articulating issues about the country. So we can see the strides we have made. So we must actually give credit where it is due. The country has made a lot of strides. Now, on the matter of the, the NASA coalition partners, I think they have to get out of selfishness and recognize that this country is greater than them. One thing that was very clear is that having missed the 30th of January swearing in, they actually mortgaged any opportunities that they would have had in the face of Kenyans. And as it's now, what they needed maybe, why they were sticking on Raila, is the matter of torture, which I think is not enough. Now, for the future and going forward, of course, there is a committee or a body that is sitting which is going to draw up some of the issues which, according to Raila Odinga and Uhuru Kenyatta, are contentious and need to be addressed. We hope and trust that they're going to come up with issues which will resonate with Kenyans. And if they don't, then I do know Kenyans have the capacity to always rise up to the occasion and demand for more.
Thank you, Prof. Bonawakili, what is your prediction?
I think the greatest achievement we got from Friday is the fact that the legitimacy of His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta was now confirmed by Raila Amolo Odinga because he had issues in terms of legitimacy. And then the other gains that I think, for me, that we have noticed is that the NASA or ODM, whichever you want to call it, has agreed to work with President Uhuru Kenyatta in terms of pushing the agendas that President Uhuru Kenyatta has had. But as to whether a committee or a team of experts will be formed and whether that expert will achieve anything in terms of knowing or reshaping the history of this country, it remains to be seen, because one of the biggest challenges is that unless NASA itself puts its house in order, then agree on how they want to push forth, then it will not end up anywhere, because it will be seen as ODM versus Jubilee.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Kakai Kissinger, lawyer and governance expert, and Professor Isabel Kodiaga, regional representative, Southern Delta International. Good to have you both. Thank you for joining us on the broadcast and for giving us your perspectives. And that's why we leave it on Bottomline Africa this Tuesday night, the 13th day of March 2018. Many thanks for joining us. I'm Ben Kitili, sitting in for Yusuf Ibrahim. For all of us here on the broadcast, thank you for watching. Good night from Nairobi.